Welcome in, guys. This is my spoiler-free review of Spider-Man Brand New Day 2026. But first, a word from our sponsors. It's been about 5 years since we last had a Spider-Man Tom Holland movie, and if I'm being honest, I kind of forgot where the story left off and where the story was headed. All I remember is that Spider-Man erased his memory of himself in everybody's minds, so nobody remembers who he was, and that's essentially where this movie picks up. To give a brief overview, you have Spider-Man, who is just completely isolated in his little spider cave, and he is only focused on being Spider-Man and fighting crime, and that causes a little bit of an internal battle where he kind of forgets who he is. I think the acting was exceptional. I really think Tom Holland gets better and better at playing Peter Parker and Spider-Man each time he picks up a new project. And personally, I think he's my favorite Spider-Man. You have great cameo appearances from the Punisher, Hulk, and Yelena. But let's be honest, Yelena is only there for the small potato stuff. I think the camera work was gorgeous. I think the action scenes, swinging from building to building, all the way from hanging out at the top of a building at night with moody lighting and neon lighting. This was directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, who I think did an awesome job. He was also the director of Shang-Chi, and I'm really excited to see where he takes future movies and future projects, because I think he did an awesome job here. I think his casting was on point. His costuming was on point. He actually allowed Spider-Man to be wearing the Spider-Man costume. I think there were some CGI and some sound things, but nothing that necessarily took you out of the movie. And overall, I think the entertainment value really hits on this movie, and from start to finish, you're going to be invested the entire time. And this really feels like it's going to be a staple of the MCU that I think is really going to kickstart going into that next phase of Doomsday and Secret Wars. But I want to dive a little bit more into the nitty-gritty, and let's talk a little bit more about the story. So like I was saying, you have Spider-Man and Peter Parker that's just in complete isolation, and he's focused on being Spider-Man and nothing else. He doesn't have relationships with friends or family or significant others. And this causes a struggle inside. It's almost like his body is telling him that there's an imbalance. His body consists of those spider arachnid qualities as well as those human qualities, and because he's so focused on being Spider-Man, those arachnid and spider qualities just begin to take over. He starts to lose control of his powers, maybe gets a couple new powers, all while maybe forgetting who he is and losing that humanity. And so going through the movie, he really just works on how to balance this internal struggle. There is a new villain introduced into this movie that I don't want to touch on too much because I think some will consider it as spoilers. But it's ultimately, I think, doing a great job at setting up the future movies and what's to come. I am so glad they had the Punisher in this movie because I really feel like he is such a good balance to Spider-Man. John Berthel, I think, does a great job at playing the Punisher. They nerf him a little bit to keep that PG-13 rating, but I think he still has a little bit of that edge. We finally get the Hulk. Not Smart Hulk, early 2000s Hulk. We get a short, brief fight scene, but it's actually the Hulk. And I feel like I haven't seen the Hulk in so long, and I feel like they've done him so dirty. We get a big, giant, hulking Hulk, which is just so fun to watch, and it was so satisfying. I think Yelena is such a great addition to this universe, and she is slowly growing on me as one of my favorite characters. I think she is not only badass, but she is also hilarious. And even though she's focused on that small potato stuff, she is so important, I think, to the upcoming storylines. And I think she's doing a great job at kind of taking that place as another new Black Widow. My only issues with characters and story, I feel like, are MJ and Ned. And I just feel like it's because it's getting repetitive at this point, and there isn't a lot of depth or progression with these characters. It's been a lot of, I'm in love with you, I'm not in love with you. Obviously, I remember you, I don't remember you. Ned knows who Peter is, he doesn't know who Peter is. And I'm almost just ready for some new characters and for new friends of Peter to be introduced. We have Gwen Stacy, we have Harry. Like, where are these other characters that could be great additions to the story? That being said, it was really awesome to see their friendship kind of rebuild because they forgot who Spider-Man and Peter Parker was. But in this movie, you're able to see glimmers of their friendship rebuilding and seeing those relationships getting reformed. I just wish it maybe would have been done a little faster, a little more concisely, and then eventually we can get these characters a little more progressed to be full-blown sidekicks to Spider-Man. I think the acting all the way through was exceptional. Tom Holland is becoming one of my favorite actors. I think he's really just honing in his craft as an actor, and his performances always are very satisfying and well done. He is also my favorite Spider-Man. I think he does the best at being a balanced Peter Parker and a great Spider-Man. I think Tobey Maguire was a great Peter Parker, but I wasn't a big fan of his Spider-Man. And then you had Garfield, who I think was a great Spider-Man, but I don't think he was a good Peter Parker. Tom Holland, I think, does a great job at being a young, inexperienced, goofy kind of kid that's also just a genius and a badass. And then he's also great at being a funny, quirky Spider-Man that is actually also a badass. Jon Bernthal is an exceptional Punisher. Of course, Mark Ruffalo is a great Hulk. You have Sadie Sink, who I think did a great job with her performance in this movie. That's where I'm going to leave it. That brings me to Zendaya. And maybe it's just me, but I am just not a Zendaya person. I'm not a Zendaya believer. I think she plays the same role and has the same emotion and expressions in every role that she does. I don't think her range is completely there. All I see is Rue cosplaying as MJ, and it's always the same kind of character in every movie. But that's where I'll leave it. Maybe in the next movie, MJ can be written with a little more depth. And I feel like if it wasn't for the fact that Tom Holland and Zendaya were married, there wouldn't be a lot of chemistry or emotion with her character in these movies. Cinematography was all exceptionally well done. I think everything was shot beautifully. And part of this comes down to directing. It almost seemed like Dustin Creighton took a lot of inspiration from video games and comics. And I've even seen videos of side-by-sides of Spider-Man jumping off of a building in the Insomnia video game, side-by-side compared to Brand New Day, Spider-Man jumping off of a building. And it just felt so much more lively and Spider-Man-y. You could really feel the magnitude of the swinging from building to building. I thought they had a really kind of new added touch of cameras inside his mask while he's swinging or going through something strenuous. Kind of almost a homage to the internal cameras in the Iron Man masks. And I don't remember having seen that before in past Spider-Man movies. Everything was vibrant, colorful, punchy, just as most Marvel movies are. I really felt like they captured a lot of the streets of New York and the moody lighting, almost like Into the Spider-Verse-esque. The colorful sunset skies, lit up night skies, neon signs and street lighting throughout the city. It all just felt like it had more life and substance to it. So I'm super excited to see where Dustin Creighton takes these movies. I think he's on board for another 1 or 2 Spider-Man movies, because I really think he's taking this universe in the right direction, and maybe he can partner on some other movies. This is one movie that I really felt like solely focused on Spider-Man, because I feel like in these movies, it can be like 70% Peter Parker, 30% Spider-Man. This felt like the opposite. It was like 70% Spider-Man, 30% Peter Parker. And I think that's also because the main story was that balance and how he is letting Spider-Man consume him and forgetting who Peter Parker was. I think the tone of this movie felt a little more edgy and dark than other Spider-Man movies in the past have felt. And I feel like if they wanted to, they could have slapped an R rating on this movie and really took it to that point. But I think they wanted to keep the family-friendly PG-13, understandably so. But because Spider-Man is going through this internal battle and this darkness and having these spider qualities take over, it could have easily transitioned into a dark man-spider type of story with a little bit more edge and punch to it. I think costuming was great, and just the overall presentation of these characters. You have Spider-Man, who I feel like had a lot less CGI to him and a little bit more practical effects and actually wearing a suit. Punisher obviously looks great. We actually got a great Hulk scene. There were some CGI and sound things that bothered me a little bit, but it wasn't too big of a deal. I think because the movie focuses on majority of the time how Spider-Man has these heightened senses and heightened hearing, that almost kind of translated over into the sound, where yes, it makes sense. Spider-Man is going through this scene where everything is so heightened and he's hearing car alarms and birds chirping and you name it. But then it almost felt like it stayed too long, and in the next scene, these sound effects were still loud and it overshadowed dialogue. So it's almost like the editing was a little off sometimes. Some of the CGI was a little wonky, and it honestly just bothers me because we're in 2026, and sometimes I feel like CGI from 2006 was way better. This budget had $225 million to it, and I feel like sometimes those scenes can just be a little more polished, a little more well done. Overall, this movie is fantastic. I think it's going to keep you on the edge of your seat from start to finish. Tons of emotion. Seeing Spider-Man battle himself as Peter Parker in Spider-Man, those internal struggles, and embracing the dark side and learning to work with that. Seeing him build his friendships and love interests and all those relationships again from scratch. And how it all comes together and we feel like Spider-Man is on top and he has found his new identity moving forward. There is tons of suspense, tons of action, tons of great, funny moments that are actually funny and not just goofy. I think Marvel does an exceptional job at putting in those little comic relief scenes that really help just kind of bring the movie together without overdoing it, except for Love and Thunder. But overall, I think this is going to be really a staple in the Marvel universe. It's going to be a staple as far as one of the better Marvel movies to come out. And I think it's going to be a great starting point moving forward into their next phases of Doomsday and Secret Wars. With all of that being said, overall, I'm going to give this movie a 4 biscuits out of 5. I think this story was simple, but not necessarily boring. I think it's just direct, and it's getting this universe headed in the right direction. I do have a little bit of character fatigue with a couple of the characters. Acting was all great, and I think everybody did a great job. I'm just a Zendaya hater. Everything was shot and directed beautifully outside of a couple sound and CGI things. And I'm excited for Dustin Creighton to take this universe moving forward and excited to see what he does with the next movies. You will not be disappointed, I think, by this Marvel movie like we have in the past. So I think this one is definitely one to go support, to go watch, and hopefully it's a good step in the right direction for the universe. And as a DC lover through and through, I am terribly jealous. But that's going to wrap it up for my review. If you enjoyed the video, please like it. Please subscribe to the channel. And let me know your thoughts on the video in the comments. I also go live on Twitch on Mondays and Wednesdays, so if you want to yap to me about video games or movies, come find me over there. But until next time, remember to love yourself and to love each other.